YouTube, how are we? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be touching on a topic all about the hips and what on earth can we do with them as trans people. So this all started this month when I basically decided that I wanted to tackle head on some big topics within the community, touching on obviously areas that I feel I know a lot about in terms of exercise, nutrition, and just like certain body parts. And I kicked this all off with a blog post on my website, and it was basically, essentially I wanted to create a chest guide for pre-top surgery and post-top surgery trans people, and just have everything on there possible. Like, there shouldn't be any need for any extra info after reading that, although of course if there is, then obviously drop me a question and I'll be happy to answer it, and I'll make sure it gets added onto the post, but I'm going to link that below. So below is the only chest guide you will ever need as a trans person, and that is to date my best blog post that I've done in terms of like views. It kind of blew up, so massive thank you if you viewed that, and thank you if you sent me a message saying that it helped. That was the whole point of it. So again, I'll leave that down below, and we are going to follow up today. Instead of a blog post, we've got a video, and we are going to be talking about the hips. So before we can talk about this, we have to understand exactly what it is that we are actually talking about when we say the hips. Now really, we're going to be looking at two different areas. We're going to be looking at body fat, but we're also possibly going to be looking at bone. And it's very important that we distinguish between these two, because what path we're able to take is going to be determined by our answer here. So first of all, let's talk about body fat. So if it's body fat, then you're going to be able to grab hold of it and squeeze it. If it's bone, obviously we all know what bone feels like. It's solid. If it's bone that you're feeling, obviously there isn't anything you're going to be able to do about that. If you can see that, or if you can kind of really feel that, then chances are that your body fat levels are probably already quite low. Not crazy low, you don't have to have crazy low body fat to be able to feel your hips. I mean, my body fat isn't really low and I can feel mine. But my point is that if the biggest creator of the bulk that you are seeing is bone, obviously we're kind of limited on what we can do about that. However, and where we're going to kind of go with this video is if we're talking about body fat. If it's body fat that we're feeling and that we can see, then there are of course things that we can do to help with that. So let's start at the very top here and talk about the one thing that the majority of us trans folk want is testosterone. And I'm talking here about HRT, of course, when we go on to start testosterone. And over quite a long period of time of being on testosterone, one thing that we anticipate and wait for is body fat redistribution. Now, the one thing that is really, really important to take away from this is that it is body fat redistribution, not the burning of body fat. So ultimately, if you don't go on to try and lose weight / lose body fat, i.e. work on your nutrition, begin working out, all of those kind of things that we normally talk about when trying to drop body fat, it's only going to redistribute. It's just going to move from one area that is typically deemed more feminine to somewhere slightly more male. The point is it's probably going to very slowly move from your hips, but it's not going to go away. It's just going to move to another location on the body. Okay, so the daddy of all questions, how do I burn it? Now, what's really important to note here is what phase are you in terms of, are you on testosterone or are you not on testosterone? Because here's the thing, if you are holding body fat in quite a feminine way, i.e. you're not on testosterone or you're just very new to testosterone, the chances are you're going to have to get very, very lean in order to burn that body fat. You might even have to get so lean that it's not sustainable to maintain in the long term. And that's probably not the news that you wanted to hear, but it is the news that you need to hear, because it's so important to be honest and truthful, and you know, there's a lot of things that get said that just simply aren't true. And I want to break those myths. And so If you're not on testosterone, what are the chances of you getting completely flat sides due to lowering your body fat? Well, of course, it is possible. Everybody's genetics are different, and actually, you might be fine with that. From my personal experience, I did hold body fat quite highly on my sides, also known as love handles, and in order for me to have completely burnt those away, like to be just like completely flat down the sides, I would have had to have gotten very, very lean, and that level of leanness most likely wouldn't have been maintainable year round. However, does that mean that you can't make them smaller? Not at all. Of course, it's body fat, you can burn it. You can go on to burn it completely down, like I say. It's just how maintainable it's going to be in the long run. But my point is, chances are, if you are quite high in body fat, we can lower that substantially and make them probably a lot smaller than they are right now. So how do we do that? The main one, and you've probably heard this get thrown around a lot, is a calorie deficit. You need to be eating less than your body needs in order to survive, so that your body turns to other fuel sources within the body, so not food. The main one I'm going to be talking about here is body fat, and that's literally how weight loss occurs. People enter a calorie deficit. People can talk about low carb, low fat all they want. Ultimately, if we're talking about just general population, trying to pull some weight off, trying to pull some body fat off, get yourself into a calorie deficit. Tracking your food is a really good option there because it's super simple. It's going to keep you accountable. The best way to go about trying to, people want to know, like, how do I get into a calorie deficit? The easiest way that I find, and this is how I run things with clients, is we'll do a week-long food diary. If their weight is maintaining for that whole week, what we'll do is we'll average out the calories that they consume for that week. We'll pull back, say, 200-300 calories, watch the scale for a week as they track those calories, and if they lose weight, we continue on with that. If they don't and everything else is in a good place, i.e. training, sleep, water intake, then we'll pull back a little bit more on calories. Specific exercises. So let's talk about the exercises that you can use to burn through that body fat on those love handles. So here we go. These are my top 5 exercises that you can use to do that. Yeah, that they don't exist. So spot burning is not a thing. You can do as many side planks as you want. I don't know what other crazy exercises people will probably tell you to do. If someone knows anything about exercise and nutrition, they won't be telling you to do specific exercises to pull body fat from certain areas, because it's just not possible. I really wish it was possible, because it would make my life and my clients' lives. It would make my life and my clients' lives a lot easier. But yeah, this is the main reason why I wanted to create this series of blog posts and videos going headfirst into these issues, because unfortunately there's a lot of bad info out there, not just on the topic of this, on the topic of basically everything in the world, but I'm hoping that I can kind of dispel some rumours. And yeah, so if anybody ever tells you, just do some side planks for your love handles, just unfriend them instantly and send them my way. I'll deal with them. Alright? Last one. This one gets thrown around a lot, and I think, in a way I get it, I think it is helpful, but again, I'm very realistic, and I just want to put some thoughts on this out there. So, a lot of the times we hear the whole, okay, you can't do anything about your love handles right now, or you can't get them as small necessarily as you want to, so let's work on creating a big back and big delts, which in theory is great, but we need to be practical. So first of all, we have to look at who is in front of us. Is this somebody that's on testosterone or not? Regardless, that person still has the ability to build muscle, unless, again, there's some other condition that might be going on that we're not going to get into right now, because that is a minefield. However, obviously it's very important to be realistic about how much muscle you're going to be able to gain. If you're not on testosterone, you're not going to be able to gain as much muscle as somebody who is on testosterone and whose levels are at the correct level. Again, we just have to be realistic with our approach here. I spent many years training whilst not on testosterone, and I probably achieved more in my first year of training with testosterone than like the 4 years I trained without testosterone. And that's just because it's such a powerful hormone. It's anabolic in its nature. And again, I'm not trying to be negative, but we just have to be realistic. The second thing to consider here is, are you in an appropriate position to build muscle? I.e., what is your current body fat percentage? So let's say somebody comes along to me and they're not on testosterone, or they're very early on testosterone, and they say, I want to create a bigger back in order to create the illusion that my waist is smaller. But let's say that this person is 25-30% body fat. They're not in an appropriate position to build muscle. If we're going to be going into a surplus of calories, i.e. a bulk, we're going to need to spend 6 months to a year in that phase as a minimum. And during that time, even if you go through a very steady bulk, you're still going to be adding on more body fat. And so you kind of end up in a mess at the end of it, because then you've got to go into a bigger cut. And if you go into a bigger cut, you run the risk of losing more muscle than being in a smaller cut. So that is my one piece of advice. If you're wanting to create a bigger back, a bigger set of shoulders and whatnot, in order to create the illusion that your waist is smaller, that is perfectly acceptable. But before you dive straight into a bulk, just consider whether or not it might be worth bringing body fat levels down first. And it's probably one of the most annoying things to hear when you're super excited about bulking and getting some muscle, that actually someone wants you to cut down first. But trust me, in 6 months to a year's time, you will be thanking me. So to recap, what are we looking at here? Are we looking at somebody's body fat, or are we looking at bone? Obviously, if it's bone, I mean, I have yet to find a way to burn bone. But if it's body fat, of course, there is hope. There is stuff that we can do. Testosterone, what does this do? It redistributes body fat, it doesn't burn it. If it's there, it's just gonna go somewhere else, and that's absolutely fine, but it is just something to be aware of. And my personal experience with testosterone is that my body fat redistribution didn't kick in until about 1.5 years. And that generally seems to be a normal amount of time. It's one of the far later symptoms, side effects of testosterone. If you're not on testosterone, like I say, there is a chance that having super flat sides isn't currently a possibility, and even if it is, it might not be maintainable year round, but we can make them far, far smaller. So how do we go about burning fat? Calorie deficit, we've gone over that. Take your weight for a week, track your food for a week. What sort of calories are you on? Are you maintaining? If you are, pull those calories down by 200-300 and see where that leads you. Exercises, what exercises can we do to burn fat? Absolutely none. And the big back/delt debate, I think that's super helpful, and it is a really good piece of advice. But just before you go diving headfirst into a bulking phase, just look at where you're currently sat and think, is it going to be more appropriate actually for me to just pull back body fat first before going into a great gaining phase? So there we go. I think I've covered pretty much everything that I wanted to. Of course, any questions, please leave them down below. Like I say, there is a very, very similar post to this covering chest anatomy, pre-post top surgery stuff, which I will leave in the description down below. If you found this helpful, please give it a like, and as always, I will see you all in the next one.